Good evening, and welcome to Bedtime Stories, a presentation of the Florida Gulf Coast chapter of Sisters in Crime. I'm Teresa Michael, president of the chapter and your host. Each weeknight during the Southwest Florida Reading Festival, you will hear a bedtime story from one of our Sisters in Crime authors. Before we get started, I'd first like to offer a big thank you to our festival hosts for providing Sisters in Crime with the opportunity to participate in the festival. The hardworking staff of the Lee County Library System has done an exceptional job organizing the festival. As a reader, author, and Sister in Crime member, I thank you. I also want to tell you a little bit about Sisters in Crime. Our organization is filled with people just like you and me who love mystery, murder, and mayhem. Sisters in Crime was founded in 1986 by 26 women mystery authors, among them Sarah Paretsky, Nancy Picard, and Charlotte McLeod. Its mission to support women mystery writers in the largely man's world of publishing. Back then, even the greatest of women writers struggled for equity in publishing contracts, marketing resources, book award nominations, and access to bookstores, libraries, and reviews. Now, 35 years later, crime writing is no longer a man's world. Women crime writers are thriving, and Sisters in Crime supports more than 4,200 members and 60 chapters worldwide. We are an inclusive, diverse group, bound together by the love of a good crime fiction read. I encourage you to join this truly unique community which shares your passion for mystery, thrillers, and suspense. Learn more about Sisters in Crime and the local chapter in your area on our national website at sistersincrime.org. And now, this is Bedtime Stories. Bridget DelPonte writes both nonfiction and fiction across multiple genres, including mystery, fantasy, and children's books. Tonight, the Royal Palm Literary Award winner for her book, Deadly Sacrifices, reads her short story, Clair de Lune. In this modern-day retelling of the Selkie, or Seal Woman myth, we have attorney Quentin Dunphy, who never makes house calls, that is, except for the wealthy recluse Patrick Sean Horrigan. When Horrigan offers Dunphy $50,000 to burn a rotting sea chest during the upcoming blue moon, he jumps at the chance to score some easy money. Moments before fulfilling his client's bizarre request, he's unsettled by an Amber Alert for a missing baby that could be connected to the chest. With the primal qualities of Pandora's curiosity mixed with Poe's guilty conscience and the telltale heart, will he give in to his curiosity, his guilt, or greed when carrying out Horrigan's potentially lethal request?
Clair de Lune by Bridget DelPonte. Lawyers don't make house calls, but Dunphy made an exception for Mr. Horrigan. Patrick Sean Horrigan spent a lifetime spinning gold from pharmaceutical investments and frittered away his retirement as an eccentric recluse. After firing nearly every other Maine law firm, Horrigan recently chose Quentin Dunphy, Esquire, to grow and protect his abundant assets from the hungry appetites of his 3 ex-wives and 4 errant children. Horrigan paid him handsomely, and being the attorney for Maine's wealthiest man, not only boosted his practice, but Dunphy hoped it might lead to a future probate court appointment. Not bad for a C Law School graduate with the once struggling practice, thought Dunphy, as he relaxed in the back seat of Horrigan's long black limousine. At times, Horrigan's wishes flowed to the peculiar, like asking Dunphy to participate in a bizarre pagan ritual to ward off bridge trolls, or to bring fresh chicken's blood for a voodoo spell to ensure immortality. Why not indulge the old man's superstition? For as a child, Dunphy's own Nana O'Hara loved to regale him with tales of magical water horses galloping on the shore, and seals shedding their skins to dance as fetching temptresses on land. Best he could remember, These creatures in her stories always ended luring bad children to their deaths in the swirling surf. Hardly a gentle bedtime story, but probably Nana's way of getting Dumpy to eat his broccoli or to wait a half hour after lunch before jumping into the waves of the town beach. Horrigan's driver, Peters, slowly snaked the limousine along the steep driveway leading to the estate. Looking out the passenger window, Dumpy was surprised to see a young woman, her long sandy locks wildly whipping in the wind, standing atop the ridge of a seawall and looking straight out at the choppy ocean. Horrigan never hosted any visitors, jealously guarded his privacy, fencing off his beachfront property from the community. "Mr. Horrigan has a guest?" asked Dumpy, hoping to learn more about her. Peters didn't reply as he pulled in front of the mansion. Archibald, the butler, nodded to Dumpy and led him to an enormous glassed-in porch that overlooked the frigid Atlantic. The shriveled billionaire sat slumped in his wheelchair, his hands shaking as he turned the yellow pages of a weathered book. Gazing through the porch windows, Dumpy watched Horrigan study the woman as she nimbly picked her way along the seawall, her gaze fixed on white-capped waves under a fading evening sun. Dumpy tried to catch a book sliding from Horrigan's lap before it slammed onto the floor. He quickly picked it up, Celtic Legends and Lore, and returned it to Horrigan, who replied with an irritated grunt. Having lost much of his physical strength, Horrigan packed all of his energies into his booming voice. Never one to dabble in pleasantries, Horrigan got right down to business. "Dumpy, I need you to dispose of something." "Which stocks, Mr. Horrigan?" "No, not stocks this time." He paused. "A more personal item." Beckoning Dumpy closer, Horrigan pressed a skeleton key into the lawyer's hand. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "An old wooden chest. Belonged to a local sea captain. Destroy the box, its contents, and this key." Dumpy felt Horrigan's icy, gnarled hand squeeze his chubby fingers tightly around the key. "Burn them to ashes." Like any lawyer, Dumpy knew not to ask questions he didn't already have the answers to in advance. Probably just another wacky ceremony to conjure up eternal youth or endless bliss. "You can rely on my discretion, Mr. Horrigan." The old man suddenly gripped Dumpy's forearm, pulling him so close that Dumpy felt Horrigan's uneven, stale breath upon his plump cheek. "Do it yourself, just before dawn under the blue moon tonight. Tell no one. Don't open the box under any circumstances. Understood?" "Yes, sir." Horrigan released his grip, and Dumpy glanced at the rusty key before slipping it in his pocket. When Horrigan pushed a black button on the arm of the wheelchair, Archibald instantly appeared, carrying the box under a yellow blanket. He handed it to Dumpy. The chest smelled terrible, like rotting seaweed. Dumpy was startled when the young woman suddenly banged her fist several times on the porch window in front of them. Her long, dark lashes blinked back a few tears that slid down from her mournful brown eyes and down the cheeks of her stunning heart-shaped face. Dumpy sucked in his belly and gave her a courtly nod. Her melancholy smile became her only reply. "Never mind her." Horrigan waved her away, and she turned, once more looking longingly at the sea, before disappearing from view. "Thank you, Dumpy," said Horrigan. "You may go." As Archibald led Dumpy back through the mansion, he noticed the pretty woman ducking into a separate suite. The soft tinkling of a familiar piano melody then echoed through the corridors. Perhaps Clair de Lune, Dunphy thought. Nice to see that Mr. Horrigan has such lovely company. And a musical one at that, said Dunphy. Archibald didn't respond as they crunched across a broken shell driveway. Peters opened the limousine's trunk, and Dunphy put the wooden box inside. Archibald then handed Dunphy a sealed envelope, engraved with Horrigan's initials. Dunphy sensed the sandy-haired beauty watching him from a corner window as he departed the mansion. He opened the envelope as the limousine glided down the driveway. He gasped as his eyes locked on the amount. $50,000. His Booth Bay dream cottage now thrust within his grasp. As the drive back to Dunphy's office wore on, he wondered, why so much money for so little work? Relaxing back in leather seats, Dunphy discovered a crumpled parking garage receipt between its cushions. Maine Regional Hospital. Yesterday's visit lasted 53 minutes. He wondered if the old man's cancer had returned. Dunphy hoped this big check wasn't a farewell bonus, desiring the Horrigan gravy train to last a bit longer. Once the limousine arrived at his office, Dunphy decided to dismiss his concerns, preferring to dwell on his good fortune. Dunphy unlocked his cramped office and placed the wooden chest on his desk, gingerly unwrapping it from its yellow blanket. He ran his fingers over its rough-hewn surface with its crude carvings of waves and fish. He shook it and heard something softly bumping from side to side within it. Dunphy stared at the chest. Why so much money to burn this decrepit box? You're awfully late. Startled, Dunphy nearly burst out of his flabby skin. Sorry, Mr. Dunphy. Didn't mean to give you a start. The night maintenance man Gus stood in the doorway, his tool belt hanging low on his hips. What tune does she play? Tune? Yeah, your music box. Got one of them crank holes in the back. Dunphy turned the box around and saw a steel crank hole for the first time. Not worth much if it don't have no hand crank. Betcha it's inside. Got a key? The skeleton key burned in Dunphy's pocket. No key, Gus. Got my tools, prior open. Gus reached for the box. Dunphy lunged forward, yanking it away from Gus's outstretched hands. No, Gus! Didn't mean no harm. Gus stepped back and eyed Dunphy warily. Dunphy regained his composure. It's all right, Gus. Sorry. Haven't been sleeping well. Thanks anyways. Sure smells bad. Could be mildew. Eat up all them law books, lickety-split. You're right. Wouldn't want any mildew. I'll take it home tonight. For Dunphy, home remained a cramped cabin of his 30-foot motorboat docked at Thompson's Marina. Lily owned their house and sheepdog Brandy before their marriage. She kept both, but returned Dunphy after their union dissolved. That night, Dunphy didn't get much sleep for fear of missing his sunrise appointment. Restless, Dunphy thought about the box. Horrigan told Dunphy not to open the box, but he didn't say anything about turning its crankshaft. He fussed for over an hour below deck and jiggled the box numerous times, hoping to rouse it from its slumber. But it stubbornly refused to play. He only heard a faint thumping of something inside. Giving up around 11 o'clock, he groaned as he leafed through a stack of trust documents. But he couldn't concentrate and found himself staring at the box and wondering why Horrigan would pay $50,000 to destroy it. He tried to wade back into the client files, but ended up tracing the chest's nautical carvings with his index finger. At 1 a.m., he decided to nap for a couple of hours. Wrapping the blanket around the box, he shoved it under a lower berth, out of his sight and out of his grasp. He set his alarm for 3 a.m., allowing plenty of time to reach deserted Seal Harbor before sunrise. The boat cushions felt especially unforgiving that night, colder than Lily's loveless touch. As the waves rhythmically rocked his boat, he mused about Horrigan's alluring guest. He hadn't dreamed in such a long time, and ached to summon up enough imagination to caress her soft skin and soak in the depths of her soulful eyes. Dozing off, he thought he heard a muffled clinking of bells, perhaps just wind chimes flapping in the breeze, or a distant clanking of sailboat riggings. Yet the sound seemed closer. He crawled in darkness toward the lower berth, bumping his head against its short ceiling as he reached in to grab the box. He placed it on a narrow galley counter and leaned in to listen to its delicate chiming. The music box faintly repeated a song. Clair de Lune? Dumphy closed his eyes and rested his head on it. Such a soothing melody. The angry ringing of his cell phone interrupted his restful moment. Hello? Silence on the other end. Hello? Please, the woman sobbed. Please don't do it. The call went dead, and the music abruptly stopped. Dumphy shook the box in hopes of reviving its tune. His cell phone rang again. Hello? Please, don't! I beg of you, don't do it! The line went dead again. Dumphy checked his call log, which simply read, unavailable. He jostled the box once more, hearing only the same gentle thumping inside. He put the box away and stumbled back into the V-berth cushions. The box unexpectedly began to play as Dumphy drifted off to sleep, fantasizing about making love to Horrigan's guest. As Dumphy reached to embrace her, a sharp rap on his cabin door snapped him awake. You in there, Dumphy? Jim, is that you? Yeah, sorry to wake you so late, but it's an emergency. Dumphy opened the door to find Jim Johnson, a stocky harbor patrol captain, filling the entry to his cabin. Emergency? Yeah, we got an Amber Alert. Baby named Emma, stolen right out of the maternity ward at Maine Regional Hospital yesterday. It's been all over the news. Jim handed Dumphy a flyer with the infant's picture and the tragic details of her disappearance. That's terrible, but what are you doing here? That old Betty Margaret Evans said she saw you carrying something in a blanket earlier this evening. Called us claiming she heard a baby crying. I normally pay no mind to that crone, but dispatch said I better check it out. No, I understand. You got a job to do. Dumphy flipped on the cabin lighting and crawled into the V-berth. What if Jim wanted to look inside the box? Mr. Horrigan ordered him not to open it, and he wasn't going to lose $50,000 because of some nosy neighbor. He grabbed a nearby ice chest and pulled the yellow blanket over it. Just a cooler, said Dumphy. Jim pushed the blanket aside and opened the ice chest. It was empty. Damn it, I should have known. Sorry to wake you up with this bull. That's okay. No harm, no foul. Jim hastily shook Dumphy's hand and jumped back into his boat. As the whir of Jim's motorboat's engine faded, Dumphy mopped his brow with the blanket. He discovered the initials, M.R.H., sewn on its hem. Maybe a Horrigan family monogram. Glancing at the Amber Alert, he noted that little Emma had vanished soon after her birth, wrapped in a yellow receiving coverlet bearing the hospital's initials. Dumphy dropped the blanket. M.R.H.? His mind started racing as he remembered the parking receipt. He pulled out the music box and listened to something gently rolling inside. No, it couldn't be. Mr. Horrigan wouldn't do such a terrible thing. Impossible. Even if he visited the hospital the old man remained trapped in that wheelchair. Impossible. But he knew Horrigan had the means to enlist others. Dunphy lay down and tried to sleep, managing only to twitch and squirm in a tormented wrestling match with the sheets and pillows, until his alarm rang at 3 a.m. He gathered up the box in the blanket, his butane lighter, and a stack of old Acadia Times newspapers for kindling. Dunphy carefully scanned the marina as he climbed off his boat. Hurrying along a dock, the music box began to play loudly. He quickly shoved the box into his trunk. All the way to secluded Seal Harbor, he could hear the muffled tinkling of the music box. As he pulled into a deserted parking lot, the chest fell silent. Dunphy lugged the box onto the shore, bathed in pale blue moonlight. He collected stray branches and arranged them with the newspapers in a neat pile. Placing the chest on top, he winced as he heard more muted bumping sounds inside. Out of the corner of his eye, he spied the initials, M.R.H., on the blanket's hem. He reached over and tucked it under the battered chest. He tried to put his mind at ease by focusing on 2 harbor seals playfully splashing in the shimmering waves. The ringing of his cell phone jarred his frayed nerves. "Hello?" "Please don't do it. Don't hurt her. Don't do it," sobbed a woman's voice. Dunphy looked at the caller ID, but it registered unavailable. It rang again with the caller ID still blinking, unavailable. He refused to answer it, setting his phone on vibrate. It continued to buzz for the next 10 minutes straight before stopping. As evening melted toward dawn, he lit the kindling. The burning music box began to play, Clair de Lune. He gave it a kick, but it refused to be silenced. The phone buzzed again, and he recognized Mr. Horrigan's number on his caller ID. "Hello, Mr. Horrigan. I'm burning it now." "Please don't burn her," cried a female caller. "I beg of you." Dunphy dropped his phone into the sand and panicked as he heard a wailing police car siren. Squinting in the dark, he saw police lights bouncing off trees lining the harbor road. The chiming box smoked in growing flames. As flashing blue lights drew closer, he grabbed the skeleton key from his pocket and rushed back to the box. The old man would never know he opened it, and he needed to make sure. Dunphy scooped sand to douse the flames and frantically stuck the key into the weathered lock. Gulping for air and dripping with sweat, he tore open its lid and reached inside, pulling out only a wet, furry pelt. He tossed it angrily into the sand. No dead baby, for God's sakes. Dunphy lumbered over to the parking lot and leaned against a smelly porta-potty. An audible sigh of relief and exhaustion escaped from his lips when a police car swooped past the beach. He hastily returned to the shoreline as sunrise approached. He looked for that strange pelt, but it was no longer there. What the hell? He wildly searched on his knees for it in the sand. Just then, he heard seals barking along the water's edge. The creatures glared at him and batted their long lashes over haunting brown eyes, the same eyes of that lovely woman at Horrigan's mansion. "How easily you forgot Nana O'Hara's stories of enchanted seal women," barked one of the magical Selkies, "burning our baby sister's sealskin in a captain's chest, sentencing her to life on land with that despicable fiend who lured her ashore with its sweet music. With her sealskin restored, she'll be free once more," burbled a second Selkie, clenching the pelt in her teeth. back home in the sea with her sisters. The Selkies wobbled into the frothy surf as the music box played. In desperation, Dumpy scrambled to his feet and plunged into the shallows, hoping to retrieve the sealskin from Horrigan's mysterious beauty. The two mystical sea maidens streaked away, howling and squeaking with delight, having rescued their imprisoned sister from Horrigan's rapacious clutches. As salty waves knocked him back to shore, Dumpy cursed himself. The check's ink seeped down his soaked shirt as Dumpy haplessly watched his promising future evaporate in the morning sun.
Thank you. Tomorrow night, I hope you'll be back as Dr. Tammy Giuliano will read The Fetch Connection. Thank you and good night.